What's up, Bills fans? I know I haven't done a video in a really, really long time. I actually did. It was kind of better that it didn't work out anyway because it was before the staff was completed, before Doug Whaley was hired, and it just didn't upload correctly, and I was just kind of pissed that it didn't, so I just didn't make another one. But that was, two huge pieces of news that I wouldn't have been able to talk about if the vid did upload. So nevertheless, I think we've had a lot of positive news. I know a lot of people were, uninspired and a little upset about the lack of quote-unquote Buffalo going out and trying to get a Cowher, or trying to get a Gruden or a Shanahan, and I think if anybody just stepped back and saw the situation clearly, those guys are mainly using Buffalo for leverage anyway to see where, to gauge the market, drive up the price. And I personally, after thinking about it, I don't need that kind of coach, because I want a coach who wants to be there because he wants to win. He wants to help build a team up. He just doesn't want to get a big paycheck and try to live off his legacy that he attained from, past successes. Not diminishing those coaches by any means. I think they're good coaches. They would have been a great upgrade over what Buffalo had in Dick Duran, which is probably one of the most uninspired choices and people ever in the game of football. I mean, not having to listen to one of those press conferences again, it was more like a eulogy, is a blessing in and of itself. But here to just talk about the Changeli, his hire, I think it is what it is. Anything is an upgrade over Dick Duran. I think his history bodes well for working with mid-range quarterbacks, shall I say. He's never really had the ability. I mean, the best quarterback I think he worked with was Troy Aikman, but Troy Aikman was well on his decline when he finally got a chance to work with him, more so because of the concussions that he sustained. But I think he did well in Dallas. I mean, that's as hard a situation, if not the hardest, to coach in the league, with their fan base, the media, the owner, the personalities, especially that were on the team at the time, with Irvin and Aikman and Emmett. So he had a lot on his plate. I know Dion wasn't on the team at the time, but he had a lot to work. Just a lot of things to juggle. And I think coming to Buffalo his second time around as a head coach, I think he'll definitely be able to handle those personalities with a lot of ease, and that does play into it. The success, the ability to delegate things, I think he'll definitely handle that well. Unlike Duran, who's just seemed, the distinguished Yale guy who just couldn't think on his toes on game day and just seemed soft and was soft and wants to take it easy on the guys, and you don't want to destroy your player. All the stupid quotes he make. We don't hit in training camp. Touch, pads practices were more like touch football games. It just, and then the rash of injuries. It just soft football team, a soft team, soft mentality. The defense did play hard at times, but it just wore down. Would get injured, beat up. Small, undersized, cold weather football team who wants to play, indoor dome football, where it's undersized, more fast, fly to the ball, turf type of players on defense. It just doesn't work. And I think the message that Buddy Nick sent, and bringing in Doug Whaley, because he's obviously scouted, he's the new pro personnel director. Finally, John Guy fired. Being able to look at 3-4 players from a standpoint of bringing in free agents to plug in holes, I definitely love that idea. I love the idea of going to the 3-4 defense, going back to when Buffalo was at its best. I think it was them and Pittsburgh were pretty much the only teams in the league that ran a 3-4 defense exclusively, and then when Donahoe came in, they just pretty much switched everything. They switched the uniforms, they switched the defense, and here we are today, still rebuilding. Hopefully, Nix, Whaley, those guys can all put their heads together, Gailey, and get this thing going in the right direction. And I think it starts, honestly, we can say what we want about quarterback. I think Gailey has shown in his past that he's been able to get, again, mid-tier quarterbacks to play well for him and not kill the team. Whether it was Fiedler, Tom Zach, Cordell Stewart, those type of guys. I think he's shown Damon Heward in some cases they were able to command, lead the team, got them to the playoffs a few times. And that's a good sign. I'm not saying I'm content with those kind of quarterbacks, but there's only so many Mannings, Bradys, Breezes to go around. There's not that many of them. And if Buffalo happens to stumble upon one, you have to be lucky. You really do. I mean, scouting quarterbacks is not an exact science. I mean, how does Brady make it to the 6th round? How does Warner toil in every other league other than the NFL for how many years before he finally gets a shot due to injury? The list goes on and on. And I think there is a certain amount of luck that's involved, and due diligence, of course. You have to believe in the guy. And there's this whole thing about, you don't want to put a rookie in because he's going to get shell-shocked. I don't want that quarterback. I want a guy who's going to be mentally tough and be able to handle the pressure and go at it. And we've seen it with Trent Edwards. Do you want him as the Buffalo Bills quarterback? I mean, he's a guy, he showed potential, he showed ability. He got knocked around a little bit, threw a few interceptions, and the guy just doesn't know how to play the position anymore. He's just completely warped, but he's scared. He's afraid out there. He's afraid to pull the trigger. He's afraid to just play the position, and you can't have that. He's out there playing, afraid to make a mistake, and you don't need that kind of quarterback. If Buffalo chooses to turn the page on all three of the guys, I would not complain. I do believe, if you want to keep one guy around, you keep Braum around, see what you can do with him. Maybe you can turn him around, maybe you can get something out of him, but Fitzpatrick, I saw enough of him last year. I mean, some of the ugly throws he made, he came in there, played with moxie, but the guy just doesn't have ability. If Edwards had half a heart, maybe he could be a good backup in the league somewhere, but I don't know about that. Definitely think the quarterback position's on the table, but again, offensive line, I think a lot of injuries, a lot of shuffle. Hopefully Eric Wood's health is good. Hopefully he gets into camp. Hopefully he's okay, he's ready to go. Hopefully he'll be playing center, his real position, not guard. Another Dick Geron, another genius Yale move. Let the guy play his natural position. He was an All-American center. Put him in the pivot. Guarantee the guy's one of the best centers in 2-3 seasons. Right up there with Nick Mangold and whoever else you want to throw in there. Tackle is obviously a choice you could go, but I personally think Buffalo will go defense with maybe both their first picks, and I think if you have to go linebacker both ways. You look at any good 3-4 defense, and this thing's not going to get fixed overnight. There's too many holes, too many positions of need. You got to start somewhere. You got to start from the ground up with this thing. And if you look at any good 3-4 defense, who's the highlight of that defense? Who are the stars? They're linebackers. I know people say you need that big nose tackle there, but Jenkins is a guy who played in a 4-3, but he went and acclimated to 3-4. Granted, he's a big guy, and he got injured last year, and the Jets had to plug somebody else in there who wasn't as talented and wasn't nearly as, the name, and they played great defense late in the season after his injury. I don't even think I could tell you who the guy was, and I live right here in North New Jersey, so I couldn't tell you who his name was, but their defense played great, and I think your linebackers need to be the feature of your defense. You know, look at the Steelers. It's always had good linebackers. The Ravens. I mean, you could look at the Patriots. The decline of their defense was the decline of their linebackers. McGinnis got old. Bruschi and Vrabel. Ted Johnson. Adalius Thomas never lived up to billing. I mean, they drafted Mayo, who's a good player, but I mean, you could say last year their best linebacker was Tully Bantakane. That's not a good thing. So I think that, you know, if you want to run a good 3-4 defense, you definitely have to have really good linebackers, and that definitely was probably one of Buffalo's, if other than offensive line, more so due to injury, and even at linebacker too, a lot of injury, but definitely even healthy, they're their softest, weakest positions. Mitchell, I really, he's all right. I really don't care for him, especially in a 3-4. I think he runs around a little wild at times. Puslesny, a guy I've knocked a lot. I really knocked Puslesny around a lot, but he showed me a lot last year. Showed me some toughness coming back from the injury with the arm again. Just went in there, had a more stout plate put in, waited a few weeks, and he was right back on the field. And he made some plays. He had some pretty good hits, made some interceptions. I think he's, which was really only his second full season of play. I mean, he played 13, 12 games last year. His first season only played 3, so I think he really showed a lot. You know, he's one of those grinders. He's not going to be the best of players, but I think he's one of those grinders. He's an emotional leader. He's a smart player. I think he's one of those kind of guys you just need on your defense. I like Puslesny, but Maben, he's got to transition. Who knows how well that goes? He's definitely got to bulk up. And outside of that, there's really nothing you have at linebacker. That's why, 9th overall pick, Ronaldo McClain's sitting there. You draft him, no doubt. If you have to cut Mitchell, you cut Mitchell. But there's your other middle linebacker. Second round, best edge rushing linebacker you can find. If you haven't filled it out in free agency, or the best defensive, nose tackle you can find. You gotta fill out that front seven for a 3-4. You gotta fill it out. It'll help the special teams. They'll have more linebackers, guys that are better at covering kicks, more athletic, as opposed to carrying eight linemen sometimes into game days. You'll probably carry 5 or 6. That'll give you 3 more linebacker spots to work with special teams. So that's a plus, having Bruce DeHaven back. I think it's kind of an irony to see him back, because he was, obviously a scapegoat for the miracle, the Music City Miracle, and I always felt like he at first, of course, fire the guy, but it wasn't his fault. I mean, and the same people will say it was Rob Johnson's fault or Wade Phillips' fault that Doug Flutie. Rob Johnson essentially played a good game, had the game won, in a freak, a miracle play happened, and unfortunately Buffalo was at the end of it, and that's what it took to lose that day. So DeHaven being back, I think is really, I think it's an inspired choice. I think he has something to prove. He has a chip on his shoulder, and I think the special teams will be just as good, if not better, because I think the special teams was playing they weren't as good last year. I know they were ranked 3rd, but a lot of penalties, a lot of blocks in the back, especially early in the season, due to the Giron. I think lack of accountability, lack of discipline is definitely there. I think this team will play better on a down-in and down-out basis. I don't know how well their record will reflect. It's a pretty tough schedule next year. But if they can get a better, an improved defense, a defense that can stop the run, be a little bit more physical at the linebacker position, more athletic. I mean, if you draft McClain, you bring in somebody else that's more of a 3-4 guy who's bigger, stouter. I think the defense will be a hell of a lot better. You get competent quarterback play. It's competent. Who knows? they could sneak into the playoffs. I mean, I'd like that, but trying to be realistic, I think it's a full-on rebuilding process. As far as everything goes with the players that they do have, I don't think they have any pressing needs at free agent of their own. George Wilson, I'd definitely like to see him resign. I'd definitely like to see him stay starting at strong safety. Doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of Whitner. If somebody wants to give you a fourth or a third, you take it, but I don't think somebody's going to give that up for Whitner. And plus, I think he's a versatile guy. I think he's a good guy to have. So, keep him around. Nickel, play strong safety, can play special teams. He's a versatile guy. Good locker room guy from what I hear. So, he's a guy, you keep around. Schobel, I think he's on the decline. He did have a decent season, but this transition into this new defense, I think you just got to transition to personnel too. It's got a huge price tag, along with Kelsey, $6 million. Schobel's at 7 something. Never the most athletic guy, but to go to linebacker, outside linebacker, where he's got to shift his hips and drop. I definitely don't like that. I know they're not going to play 3-4 down in, down out. They'll be, obviously in nickel. They'll base out of 3-4, but they'll go to a 4-2-5 in some situations just to rush the passer. So I understand how that works. Much like Woodley do and Harrison do for the Steelers. I just don't think Scholl can cover, and he's a liability out there. And I think he's a smallish guy still, and just doesn't cover ground good enough to be a starting linebacker. Denny, Kelsey included. I think they just need to turn the page with a lot of these guys. Having allegiance to these older, players or careers are winding down. Jerron would definitely want to cling on to them and claim that they were. But no, I think it's time to get a little bit bigger, meaner, a little nastier on defense, and hopefully that's the way they're going. I think that's the way they will go. I mean, Nick's comments saying, we knew being with the Chargers, we knew we could beat the Colts because we were bigger, more physical than them. We get them outdoors or even indoors. We knew late in the game we could punish them a little bit because we were so much bigger, both on offense and on defense. They have a pretty good record against a pretty good team. I think they, matched up against the Patriots a few times. They were kind of 50-50 with them, but hopefully this all works out and we'll be seeing a better brand of Bills football, bigger, more physical, more built for the weather, the climate, the style of football that they should have in Buffalo. We should have as fans, as Buffalo Bill fans. Sorry if I ranted and raved a little bit, but I haven't done a video in a while. Till then, you guys, Buffalo Bill fans, take care. Hopefully we'll have a fun draft, fun free agency. I don't think they'll be too active in free agency, but we'll see where they go. Maybe they'll plug in some guys here and there and get a better idea who's where and what's what. You take care, Bills fans.